Hello everyone, welcome to my session on risk management. Today I am going to talk on the three important things which are related to risk management. The first is obviously the importance of the risk management, why risk management is necessary. Number two, the steps in the risk management process. Number three, the barriers to the risk management process. So let's start by understanding the importance of the risk management. So risk management is the process of identifying, assessing and controlling the threats to an organization, capital and the earnings. These threats or the risk could stem from a wide variety of the sources, including financial uncertainties, legal liabilities, strategic management errors, accidents, and the natural disasters. So every organization manages its risk in some way, but not always in a way that is visible, repeatable to support effective decision making. The responsibility of the risk management is to make sure that an organization makes the cost effective use of the risk management process that involves a series of well defined steps. So the purpose is to enhance the internal control and support better decision making by a good understanding of the overall risk and the overall risk exposure that exists at a particular time. So effective risk management gives the organization a better understanding of the kinds of the risk they face and their potential impact. It enables the managers to make informed decisions about how to eliminate or mitigate the risk. It will also help them to be better prepared to respond to the negative events, developing organizational resilience and sustainability. Ultimately, organizations which manages risk well will be more likely to achieve their objectives at lower overall cost. So the risk management process consists of four steps. These are identifying, assessing, planning and monitoring and control. So collectively these steps form a logical sequence necessary for robust implementation of the risk management. They are carried out in sequence as any one step cannot be undertaken until the preceding step has been completed. They are all repetitive in nature, in that when additional information becomes available, it is often necessary to revisit earlier steps and carry them out again to achieve a complete picture of the risk, to achieve the activity at that time. So first step is the identification of the risk. The first step, as I said, risk identification is the process to identify all the events that can negatively or positively affect the objectives of the project in terms of project milestones, the financial trajectory of the project or the project scope. These events can be listed in the risk matrix and later captured in the risk register. So a risk or opportunity is characterized by its description, causes and consequences, qualitative assessment, quantitative assessment and mitigation plan. It can also be characterized by who is responsible for its action. Each of these characteristics is necessary for a risk or opportunity to be valid. In order to be managed effectively, the risk and opportunities identified must be as precise and specific as possible. The title of the risk or opportunity must be concise, self-explanatory and clearly defined. All members of the project can and should identify the risk and opportunities, and the content of these is the responsibility of the risk owners. So risk managers are responsible for ensuring that a formal process for identifying the risk and developing response plan is conducted through exchanges with the risk owners. The techniques or the tools which we use to identify the risk are: number one, analysis of the existing documents; number two, interview with the experts; number three, the brainstorming sessions; number four, using the approaches of standard methodologies such as failure modes and effects analysis, the decision tree analysis, etc. Then number five, considering the lessons which are learned from the past, from the risk and the opportunities encountered in the previous project. Number six, using pre-established checklist or the questionnaires covering the different areas of the project, that is the risk breakdown structure. Now, as we have understood the first step, let's move further to the second step, that is risk assessment. So risk assessment is a general term used across many industries to determine the likelihood of the loss of an asset, loan or investment. Assessing risk is an essential for determining how worthwhile a specific investment is and the best processes to mitigate the risk. It presents the upside reward compared to the risk profile. So risk assessment is important in order to determine the rate of the return an investor would need to earn deem an investment worth the project risk. So the goal of the project risk assessment is to prioritize individual risks so that it is clear which risks are more important and most urgent. This will require the understanding of: number one, the probability of each threat and opportunity; number two, the impact of each threat and opportunity; and number three, the most important, the proximity of each threat and opportunity. So the goal of risk assessment is to help the organization prepare for and combat the risk. Other goals will include providing an analysis for the possible threats, the prevention of injuries or illnesses, or meeting legal requirements, creating awareness about the hazard and risk, creating an accurate inventory of the available assets, justifying the cost of managing the risk, then determining the budget to mediate the risk. So these things whatever I have mentioned are generally the additional goals of the risk assessment. So the steps used in the risk assessment form an integral part of your organization's risk management plan and ensure that your organization is prepared to handle any risk. Now when we talk about risk assessment, it involves quantitative risk analysis and qualitative risk analysis. So quantitative risk analysis uses the mathematical models and simulations to assign the numerical values to the risk. An example of quantitative analysis would be a Monte Carlo simulation. This method, which can be used in a variety of fields such as finance, engineering, and science, runs a number of variables through a mathematical model to discover the different possible outcomes. There is another analysis which is being used in risk assessment. This is called as the qualitative risk analysis. So qualitative analysis of the risk is an analytical method that does not rely on the numerical or mathematical analysis. Instead, it uses the person's subjective judgment and experience to build the theoretical model of the risk for a given scenario. So a qualitative analysis of a company might include an assessment of the company's management, the relationship it has with the vendors, and the public's perception of the company. Now we have done with this second step. Let us move further to the step number 3, that is the risk action plan. So a risk action plan is the course of action that an organization agrees upon to help them address the potential risk, reduce the likelihood of these risks occurring, and lessen the impact of these risks if they do occur. So a plan is created to ensure that the risk actions are carried out in a timely manner. So a plan also provides go to go guide in case the unexpected happens. So the question is, what is risk action plan like? So a risk action plan is like a plan for camping trip. So if you are going to go into the wild, you need to make sure that you take a study tent to protect you from the weather, extra food in case if you are out for longer than as you are expecting, a spare set of clothes in case it rains, and a pen knife in case if you need some tools. So you should always take a map and a compass amongst other things. It would be silly to set off an adventure without making a proper plan and collecting all these things to help you to prepare for what is ahead. A risk action plan prepares you to set off on any business adventure by helping you to put some contingency strategies into the place. So what is the purpose of risk action plan? A risk action plan helps to prepare you to face the potential risk which may occur as a part of a business scenario and helps you to tackle any problems which may occur. A risk action plan will provide you with the strategies which are appropriate dependent on the levels of the risk which your organization faces. So what are the types of risk action plans? There are two types of risk action plan. Number one, the risk avoidance plan. These plans includes the measures which aim to completely avoid the risk in question by preventing them from happening. Number two is the risk reduction plan. So these plans includes the measures which reduce the likelihood of a risk occurring or the reducing the overall effects of a risk if it occurs. So what is involved with developing a risk action plan? So in order to develop an appropriate risk action plan, risk must first be identified and evaluated. When developing a plan, an organization must consider the probability of a risk occurring and the potential cost to the company if that risk occur. When developing a risk action plan, those involved with creating the strategies must carefully consider whether the cost incurred in preventing the risk from occurring would be less than the cost incurred if it did occur. If the cost of prevention is higher, then the organization may want to take their chances. Now, as we have understood the step number 3, that was the risk action plan. Now we are moving ahead to the step number 4, that is risk monitoring and control. So risk monitoring and control refers to the process of continuously identifying and establishing the best methods of dealing with those risks. Risk monitoring is important because it helps to highlight whether strategies are effective or not. Risk monitoring can impact upon the management organizational risk because it can lead to identification of the new risk. Strategies may also need to be changed or updated depending on the findings of the risk monitoring strategies. So risk monitoring and control begins at the start of the project when all potential and known risks are identified, and then just as importantly continues throughout the project as those initial risks are continuously tracked while new risks are also identified as work continues, changes and progresses. So findings which are produced by the risk monitoring process can be used to help create new strategies and update older strategies which may have proved to be ineffective. Now, as we talk about this risk monitoring process, there are different types of risk monitoring. Number one, that is voluntary. So these risk monitoring strategies are not required by law, but are carried out by companies to help them to learn from the events which have occurred in the past. Number two is obligatory. So these risk monitoring strategies are required by the law for some organizations to ensure that proper risk monitoring and management methods are used. Number three is the reassessment. So secondary or the tertiary assessments of risk and risk management strategies are called as reassessment. Then we have number four, that is the continual strategy. Continual strategy talks about monitoring which is always ongoing in nature. Now the question is, what is involved with performing risk monitoring? So in order to perform the risk monitoring, risk must be identified and evaluated. Once a risk action plan has been created, a timeline should also be created to ensure that checkups are done in a timely fashion. In order to monitor the implementation of action, tick boxes may be used to show that each step of the process has been followed. Note should be kept at every stage of the implementation and action process so that these can be analyzed and referred to during the monitoring phase of the process. Effective risk management is likely to increase the performance against goals by contributing to some of the points. These are: number one, some unexpected shocks and unwelcome surprises; number two, more effective use of the resources; number three, reduced wastages; number four, reduced fraud; number five, better service delivery; number six, enhance innovation. So these are some of the areas wherein the effective risk management will contribute. Now, as I have explained you the four steps in the risk management process, let us move further to understand the barriers to the risk management process. So what are the barriers? There are actually number of barriers or constraints which are common to the implementation of all the steps in the risk management process. Some of the barriers are: number one, lack of an organizational culture that appreciates the benefits of the risk management; number two is the immature risk management practices; number three, lack of risk facilitation resources and the time; number four, lack of policies, process, strategies and the plans; number five is lack of a senior management sponsorship; number six is lack of training, knowledge and formal risk tools and techniques; number seven is lack of clear guidance for the managers and the staff; number eight is lack of incentives for participation in the risk management activities. So here in this particular session today, I covered the importance of risk management, then the risk management process, and then finally I talked about the barriers to the risk management process. In my next session, I will talk further on the subject of risk management in detail. Till then, thank you so much. Thank you once again. Bye bye.